Hello and welcome to the video commentary for Goblin issue 12A. My name is Solomon Mars, creator of Goblin, volume 1 in the 555 saga. I'll just briefly talk about this cover. There's not a lot behind it. Really the creation of it came down to, I had noticed that up to this point, everyone had been represented. Every character in the story had pretty much been represented on a cover, especially out of this trio of Sune, Sapphire, and 26. All of them had appeared on the cover except for Sune. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll put her on a cover. Especially considering this particular story arc was coming to an end. I was like, let me go ahead and give her a chance on the cover. So really that's all this cover is about. And I tried to give her sort of a pose of, sort of slightly strength. There's some strength to her pose and everything. But I didn't want it to look so bland. So I superimposed that sort of image of Jeff back there in the background, which is actually taken from the interior of the book. I took that picture and sort of put it in there, and then changed the color of it so that it matched the greens and things like that, and brought down the opacity on it. But really, that's the entire background to this cover. Is I just wanted Sune to have a cover as well. I'm not actually sure. I don't think Reduha has been on a cover. Now that I think about it, I don't think he's been on a cover himself, which is kind of tragic. But he's got plenty of opportunity to be on covers, so yeah. Oh no, he has been on a cover. What am I thinking? He was on a cover with Amy. So yeah, there you have that. So let's just get into this story. So it starts out, we see Amy sort of recovering from this attack by Sapphire, and little steam billowing out. And I wanted to show that she was sort of like, almost like it's sort of like the way she's using it is like I don't know, I can't even think of the proper animal or insect. I can't think of a proper animal or insect to use to sort of convey this idea of her clawing. I mean, I guess it's easy to see. She clawed, she used the feet of this thing to sort of claw and hold herself in this position away from Sapphire, who's back down below after that crash, that intentional crash. And then she just immediately just goes right into her attack. Again, this is me sort of implying that desperation that these characters are in, this degree of desperation, that things have become really desperate, where up to this point, some characters like Amy, she's been fairly calm. She hasn't really had to be really violent towards anyone. There have been a few occasions where you see her sort of in an action sort of scenario. She definitely was in issue 4, I believe, whichever one where they were being attacked by the rune claws. You see her sort of fighting back there, and you see her sort of pushed again, because it's not really in her nature 100% to fight, but she keeps being pushed and pushed and pushed, and so now she has to, because she very much, this is about protecting Mumu. Excuse me. Before, it was about just kind of herself. The rune claws weren't after Mumu. These people are after Mumu, and it's up to her to protect him. And so, I'm just gonna enjoy this whole idea of them around this in this water and on these water effects and Sapphire jumping up there. all of this was actually supposed to be way more interesting than it actually it turned out in the end. I am a little disappointed with the flow of it. It's still, all of it looks a little stiff to me, but I don't know. I was a little exhausted by this point with this story arc, and I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to tell the full story in the rest of 12, and that it was going to spill over into 13. And I was really, really afraid that that was going to happen, and because I was just so tired by this point, and I couldn't see clearly if I was going to be able to fit every little detail that I wanted to in here. But of course, then some things did change as I was working on the story, and just before I started working on the story, I had made some decisions that I'll actually talk about in the 12B commentary. No, I'll talk about it in this one. I'll actually talk about it in this one when it gets to that point. And this is kind of playing around with Sapphire using her, or the unique ways that she can use her logic, which is something I try to give every single character sort of a unique way that they use their logic, a slightly different way. At least with these three, with Sapphire, Sune, and 26, I wanted to show that they're not just kind of generic characters, because up to this point you've only mostly seen Jeff as a logic smith, and then you saw J. Mephisto as a logic smith, and the way that those two use their logic, it was different from one another. And then there's the introduction of the Rock Eater. You see there's some others, it's kind of spread out throughout there, like the Old Woman from issue 5 and Sleemer from issue 2 and things like that. But where you constantly saw them, all those characters were sort of in passing, so I didn't have to concentrate on making them unique in their visual presentation. And with these three, I had to make them unique. I didn't want logic to seem very cookie cutter. I wanted to show that it is very broad in its range, and it actually has different sects that have branched off, different branches that have been created over time, and different philosophies, different approaches to those different philosophies even. In one philosophy it can branch into several different ideas of an approach on this. And I think I talked about this a little bit more, a little bit in the past. But this was kind of her using her static electrical discharge, this sort of weird sort of variation of this fairly typical logic in this sort of projectile way. Throwing it at the water, and then the water exploding and sort of redistributing it almost in a bullet fashion, sort of supercharging her logic, this incantation. And that's just kind of her having, this is something sort of playing around with the idea that this is something that she's done before. She's played around with this kind of thing before. Not exactly playing with water, but clearly she has played with water when you see some of the things that she's done. She's, had time to experiment with her own skills and her talent and the things that she's learned. I like the little smoke that's kind of pouring off the falling rocks, It's a really clean image, very bright, very clean. Something about it. I like this one because of the angle that it's at. It's a very strange perspective. It just felt right. It's an odd picture, but it felt right in showing her at a slight angle above, sort of bird's eye view, but almost at a 3/4 bird's eye. It just felt right, so I went with it. And just showing again Sapphire being strategic, and sort of calculating and realizing that what she did needs more power. So she's got to recalibrate and do it again. And you see like the result of her doing it again, and shoots up, and Amy really just manipulating Amy really for her own, to get her back down to the ground. It kind of works, a little. I like that, this whole Amy just kind of getting knocked around in this can, this tin can she's in. Of course, Mumu kind of he's having fun a little. Amy, not so much. That whole image I actually did right side up, colored it right side up, and then flipped it for the final version. I just flipped it upside down. It just makes more sense than to actually work on a picture upside down. Things tend to warp. When you can actually manipulate it in such a way, why not? Why not do it normal and then flip it upside down? And of course, this is Sapphire just taking that same concept that's been introduced a little here and here and here, in the first few pages, and taking it a step further and showing again just how unique her ability is, just upplaying it even more, upping it. And just again, I love the way the colors, her shirt and her pants and everything about her, the different colors that are applied to her. I love the way that they look in contrast to like the color of the water and the color of the pillars behind her, and all the colors that are being presented in these pages. They just seem to work with her, and I'm glad that they came together like that. And yeah, you see her riding this sort of up splash that she's created, this water dispersal. She's just kind of riding it, and it took a couple of tries for me to get this image right. One of them was a straight on image, and I didn't like the way it looked, of being direct, face forward. And so I tried one from the top. I tried one at a 3/4 angle from the bottom, and then I decided eventually to sort of just do this slight 3/4. It's sort of almost straight on, but it's 3/4 tilted to the side, but it's us looking straight on at it. I decided that was maybe the best way to show it. It just kind of has this fun look, It almost renders that water not even looking like water. I don't know what it looks like. It's crazy looking, but that was just kind of showing that the power behind something like that. In order to push an entire person up into the air on water, she had to really make that explosion big. You can see her just kind of riding up. This picture didn't come out quite the way that I wanted it to. I wanted the angle to be a lot more, I wanted the perspective to be far more exaggerated and showing distance, from her knees up to her shoulders and up to her head. And I just kind of, the attempts at it just didn't turn out right, so I just left it at this. I went with this one in the end. And it's not such a horrible image, but it doesn't quite convey the perspective that I wanted. And then she gets hit. He kind of gets knocked around and splash. I love this picture here because you actually see this sort of entrance. You're right at the arch, the entrance arches to the Red Castle, and you see the outside and everything. But I just love the way everything kind of looks together. That background, the outside there that's shown, is actually copied and pasted and replicated several times in this issue because I honestly didn't want to draw it over and over and over. So I just manipulated that same image several times. I probably won't point it out, but when those pages come up, but hey, I just just thought it was kind of an interesting, a little tidbit. Then we cut back to the fight between Jeff and Sune. It was being pushed through the ground, she's trying to dig her feet into the ground to stop him from advancing, and he's just pushing her. That's how intense he is right now. He's really letting his anger get to him at this point. Yeah, that's kind of cool. This is her way of stopping that whole thing, that whole incident. And I thought this was kind of cool, showing how angry Jeff is at this point. He just breaks this rock in two. He just kind of pulls it across. I'm trying to remember. I think originally he was supposed to break it, like push it downwards to break it from his body. But I thought when I was working on it, I looked at that idea originally, because I had actually, I had gone ahead and done the rough drawings for it. But I looked at it and I said, well, that doesn't quite work, because he's being pushed up in his chest cavity by this thing. How is he pushing himself back and then putting his hand down there where this rock was in his chest? How do I depict that? Why would he take the time to do that? And instead I figured the best way for him to get this obstacle out of his way is if, since his hands are free, take his hands, put them on the edges, and just, fragment this rock. It was just, just a matter of the best way to get around the situation, other than what necessarily looks visually cool right away. Go with something that makes a little bit more sense, and I often try to do that, make not just visual sense, but realistic sense, which is really weird to say, considering this is a book that is very much about, it's taken from my dream world and from my imagination, and it's just kind of all about me just kind of going completely crazy, and has lots of absurdity in it for me to stick something very realistic in it. And of course, this little fight between these two, close quarters fight. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. It's very much influenced by just kung fu cinema, and just how they can fight in such close quarters, and it looks so beautiful and graceful, and it's so exciting, even though it's just essentially sort of a fist fight. It's a street fight, but these guys are being very intense about it. And you see Sune really enjoying it, and ooh, she gets kicked in the side, kneed rather, in the side. And again, just this logic that she's doing is almost like acidic. The way it's burning through stuff. It's almost like it would. You would think that it would cauterize. Like that wound that she gave Jeff, it would cut and then instantly cauterize it. But it's an open wound, and it's sort of weird. It's almost that how it's almost acidic like. But it's just that kind of thing, where it's cutting like this hot blade, but not completely, not really hot. It's a different kind of intensity. It's a different kind of energy that's being produced. It's not like fire. It's plasmic, almost. This whole sequence actually played out slightly different. She was actually and that kind of plays into the eventual fate of this entire story. Originally, Sune was supposed to grab his leg and break it. She was going to break his leg. She was going to yank so hard that it actually broke it. And so Jeff was going to actually have to continue the fight with a broken leg. And that's the reason why he was going to have to try so hard to end the fight. And instead, I decided to I didn't want to put Jeff in a position of having a broken leg, because then it hinders the rest of the story. and not just the rest of this story arc, but the rest of the story period. And that's what I realized. And it's so easy to get caught up as an artist and as a creator. It's so easy to get caught up in what would be cool, and you have to think about it in context to the rest of your story, the rest of your narrative, and how that is going to affect it. And it's easy to just explain away stuff. You can just, oh, time skip, explain it away. But I didn't want to do that because the way that the story plays out, a lot of the story is almost a day-to-day fashion, or a week-to-week and a month-to-month. And I didn't want to have him end up with a broken leg and then just explain it away with, oh, this takes place months later. Because it takes a while for a leg to heal from being broken. And I just didn't want him to have to, the character to have to deal with that kind of thing. Even though it would have been effective for this fight and to show the intensity of the Sune character and how much she wants to end this fight and how angry she is, it would have ultimately fought against the story itself. It would have worked against the story. But yeah, instead I decided she throws him up into the air. She just kind of tosses him up into the air, just showing her strength. Just how much strength that must take to take somebody by their leg and toss them up into the air. Jeff he probably weighs a good, about a good 150, 160. I'm not sure exactly how much he weighs. Probably somewhere around there. 150, 160, something like that. Maybe a little bit more. Not too much. Probably around there. He may weigh less. I don't know. But still, for Sune to do this one-handedly, that's a great feat of strength. She used a lot of energy just to do that. And then she does some incantations that push rocks out of the ground again, and they're just kind of hitting him as he's falling through the air. They're just knocking him through the air. And this, again, was supposed to be a series of pages. And I don't know, I said, no, I can do this all in one picture. It looks interesting this way. Especially with the sort of transitions in between. The blur effects, which are all done in Photoshop. Just me loosely drawing in Photoshop. I drew, I put down the color for his face, and then the color for Sankofa, the color for Sankofa's flame, the sleeve, his shirt, and his pants, and that's it. It's just loosely, and then I put a motion blur on it, and it looks like sort of a movement. It looks like a sort of a transitional movement. I think it worked out well. It's just like, I just wanted it to be painful for Jeff, just kind of like, oh, he's just being put through it, just really tortured here, but still able to get up. And, he's tough. It's not like this is his first really intense fight. And I'll be honest, when you really think about it, he's coming out of this fight a lot better than he did the fight with Sleemer and Sleemer's spawns. The sprites that Sleemer had spawned. I mean, Jeff came out of that fight just completely tattered. And in this one, he's just being bruised, really. He's being bruised a lot. With the intent to be killed, but he's just being bruised. He's coming out on a little bit better. And that's kind of intentional. I was just trying to scale back fights a little. Because, like I've said before, there's plenty of time for much bigger things to happen, and much bigger things will happen. There's some big fights that are coming up. And yeah, this is Sune calling him out on the fact that he would be dead by now if it wasn't for that sprite and the way that he's using him. And she's just kind of upset by that, she feels that she's sort of at a disadvantage because Jeff is doing this as a logic smith, but she's also doing what she does to 26, and she's taunting him, telling him that he's pretending to be a logic smith, kind of, taunting him and trying to get get him unfocused, which Sankofa actually mentions, by calling him a kid and all this kind of stuff and weak and all these things, and hoping that it would actually get him angry enough that he would lose focus and just blindly attack. Of course, it's working. And she just calls him a joke, calls him a little boy, and that's it. He just charges. And she just, it's Sune. He was a little crazy. I was hoping that it came across that she's a little bit crazy. And they're just fighting. Originally, that was where that fight ended, and then I went back to a different part of the story. And instead, I decided to continue, just to finish this fight all the way through. Just finish it, and not spread it out. I just needed to get this fight all the way through and done. I like that these pictures where I'm showing this sort of fight without showing the characters, in this duel, and the result of it. And it was just me not wanting to go through that more choreography, showing a hand-to-hand combat fight or anything like that. It's not always necessary to show every single detail in something like a fight, because it can get old very quick, for not just for the creator but also for the reader. And so I decided to kind of skip that and sort of just kind of show it at a distance and then show the end result of it, and you kind of see the clearing of the smoke, and it shows Jeff all kind of beat up and cut up a little, not quite as bad as he was in the issue 2 fight, but still pretty bad. He's far worse off than he started in this issue, and tired. But I think Sune might have come out a little worse off, as she has lost an entire arm. And this is a consequence. And that was the thing, I wanted to get across the idea of consequences. There's a consequence to what these guys are doing, using logic in this very aggressive way. Logic doesn't have to be just used for attack. I mean, the Rock Eater normally uses logic to build. She builds not only the sculptures, but she builds other things for people in the town. She fixes. She does a lot for the community using logic. And then you have these people that are being very destructive. They're using it as weapons. And that's the thing I wanted to get across, that it doesn't always have to be this way, but when it is used this way, there are consequences. And this was also me coming to terms with me needing to be responsible as a creator and as a storyteller. And again, just like I was saying with the whole idea of having your characters in like the middle of this populated area and in this environment and just being very destructive, I feel for me it was like I need to be a little bit more responsible in the way that I'm handling this story, and the way I'm showing these characters. And I didn't want Jeff to come off as a cold-blooded killer. And I guess I'll go ahead and say it. Sune's original fate was she was supposed to die. Jeff was going to kill her by decapitation. In the middle of that duel, the end result of that duel was she put Jeff in a position where he was essentially trapped, and he was going to blindly fire at her. He was going to blindly do throw some incantations at her. Those same ones he always does, where he's just kind of cutting through things like a knife. Blindly, he was just going to be throwing them, from behind a wall that he constructed to hide behind. And he was throwing them through the wall. He was cutting through the wall in hopes that she was on the other side. And the end result was he decapitated her. And so that was the end for her. But I didn't want to, put Jeff in that position. I just thought it was unnecessary. But also, I didn't want to be irresponsible in the sense of making the concept of life and death seem so frivolous, that I can just bring characters in and then, just instantly kill them. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want the idea of life and death to seem like I wasn't taking it seriously, because it's a very serious thing for me. I've known several people in my life that have died, whether by their own hand or at the hand of someone else. I've known people to do that, and to be, for that to be the end result. And some of them were older than me, and some of them were my age or younger. And it has an effect on you. Through if you're sort of exposed to this at different points in your life, especially some of them were early on. Like, I don't even know what age that was. Who cares? But I felt it was, as a storyteller, I should be more responsible about my stance on issues of life and death, and I didn't want Jeff to come across as someone who doesn't think about that, who doesn't. I didn't want him to be irresponsible and just kind of, it means nothing to him, and whatever, she attacked me so I killed her. No. I wanted him very much to be kind of like that person who sometimes, even in the heat of a battle where you very much feel like you might be killed, you still spare that person. And so, he took her arm, but he didn't take her life. And that was me kind of growing, honestly. From the original idea of this story, when I originally created the story, which was, 2 years ago? 2 years before this issue actually came out, was when I had originally, created the whole idea of Sune dying at the end of the story. There was a lot of growth, not only from the conceptualization of the story, but to the execution of this series up to this point. The character Jeff has grown, and the character Jeff is growing, but also I am growing as a storyteller, and realizing that I shouldn't kill this character off was kind of me realizing that I shouldn't be taking such an irresponsible stance with life and death, because I personally, am a very serious person about this kind of issue, but I shouldn't do things for the sake of making something awesome or making it cool or just making it seem intense. And it's just that's kind of one of those things that you have to realize as a storyteller. You have to, step back from that excitement, that rush that you get, in storytelling and in an action sequence and an action story, and really step back from being so consumed by it and look at the big picture and what you're presenting to readers and what you're saying to them, and realize that you have to, take a degree of responsibility. And while I feel everyone understands, life and death and ideas of these things. And everyone understands the severity of it. I still feel that, my depictions, if I take it too far, it makes the characters very, not even just shallow, but hollow. It makes them look like they don't care. And I want to definitely get across that they do care. They very much, they care. Otherwise, Jeff wouldn't be fighting for what he's fighting for if he didn't care about life and death. He wouldn't be fighting against the Crimson King if he didn't care about the fact that his entire family was killed and his entire town was destroyed. And he wouldn't be fighting against Sune and Sethire in 26 if he didn't care whether or not these people were intent upon killing not only himself and his grandmother, and even Raduha, who he doesn't really know, but even Amy. He cares about these people. And that's another thing, about his growth as well as my growth, is that he's now in this position where he has to care about people. It's more than just him caring about himself. It's him caring about other people. And so he's sort of growing up and leaving that sort of adolescent singular worldview where everything is sort of not necessarily revolving around you. You're not concerned about yourself introspectively. You're sort of concerned about yourself in a wider context, a more worldly context, and that's where Jeff is headed. Definitely. So we're back with Amy, who is waist deep in water, and there's some obvious noise going on in the background. But the realization there were no seatbelts, and so she got tossed around pretty bad. And the mech is filling up with water from the hole that Sapphire made on the top hatch, the escape, not the escape hatch, but the hatch really, and it's filling up pretty quick, and then suddenly, Sapphire actually finally breaks through and leaps down in there. I love that she actually, instead of just reaching in and grabbing Mumu, she actually climbs down off into it herself, just kind of one final blow to Amy and this whole emotional state that she knows this little girl is in. She comes down and she taunts her face to face. She taunts her by physically being there and snatching Mumu and running away. And this is showing sort of Sapphire and how manipulative she is, but how cruel she is, that she because honestly she could have just killed Amy. She could have killed Amy and then taken Mumu and run, but she knows Amy is defenseless, really. Amy is not a logic smith, and so she knows that she can't fight back against her. She knows she's in a position of power, and so she's taunting her, and all for her own, just her own demented self, or to feed her demented self, and it's just very cruel. But that's very much what I wanted to get, to sort of show, was that Sapphire is very cruel, far more cruel than Sune or even 26. You look at 26, and he was willing to. He felt the fight that was going on between him and Riduha was very honorable. And even though Riduha was probably going to go through an extended amount of pain as the poison coursed through him, 26 was very much willing to kind of end his suffering, and Sune was very much willing to kill Jeff, just kind of end it. But, Sapphire plays a little bit different, and she likes to kind of string things along and make people suffer, really in a way that she's almost like an emotional vampire. It's really, 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 really horrible. But that is kind of her, and we see Jeff, who has walked away from the end result of his fight, and we see him seeing Amy chasing after Sapphire through the river outside, and here we are at the last page of 12, and wow, yeah. So just that picture, I love this picture, not only for the detail that's in it, with the grass and everything, but also just the look on Sapphire's face, where you can see that she's enjoying, tormenting Amy, but also the idea that she finally accomplished the mission, this goal that they were after. She did it, and she feels very self-satisfied. And I just kind of like that. For me, that all came through in this image. and it's kind of, you know, happy with it. I'm actually unhappy with the fact that I actually portrayed the water as being that shallow. And granted, she's closer to the edge, to the shore, to the bank of the river. It's still deep enough that she probably would have been knee deep in that. And I didn't think about it when I was drawing it, really. I just wanted to show her running through the water. So hey, I messed up on that. But yeah, so that is Goblyn issue 12A. I hope that you enjoyed this commentary and the issue and just all the little tidbits into sort of the behind the scenes. You know, what changed and what I was thinking about in some of this, and really, you know, that whole idea of growth throughout a story and stuff. And I'm sure by the time we get to the end of this entire series, not only the characters but I myself will have grown quite a bit. That's my hope, at least. But so thank you for joining me on this little journey, and then hopefully you'll join me on future journeys. So